Okay, so we are going to start off by tracing our pattern. We want to get rid of that fold since it's going to be an asymmetrical piece. You want to make sure you do any grading while you do this as well. Now I'm going to put a little mark on the bottom and the top where the fold line is. That way I can easily line those up. And I'm also going to be grading my hip down one size, so I'm going to slide my pattern over to the next size up, and then I'm just going to trace this size. I'm going to trace the hip. Just basically go straight up and connect it with the line above. Since my tracing paper is clear, I find it easy just to flip it over, or you can mirror your projection, or if you have a paper copy, you can just turn it around. Make sure it's lining up here, lining up on the top. Put some patterns down if you need to. That way your paper stops from sliding around. Okay, and now that we have this all traced, we're going to start our color blocking. Okay, with our front piece all traced to one open piece with no fold lines, we're now going to make our color blocking template. And so for this particular one, I'm not going to go into the middle of the shoulder just because it's going to end up too close to the neck opening. So I'm actually going to do a little bit off center of the shoulder seam. If you want to be more identical to the inspiration photo, that shirt is more of a long crop, like it ends right at her pant line. The Constance is a little bit longer than that. So I would, if I were you, I would then go ahead and cut on the banded line, not the hem line, if you want to get it a little bit shorter like that picture. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to base my color blocking off of that. So I have a little mark here for where the banded line is, and so I'm going to base it off of there instead of the very, very bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and put a mark right here where I'm going to have my color blocking. I'm going to end it. Let's see. I'm going to go about 6 inches up from that banded line. And this will vary slightly depending on the size that you're doing. Go ahead and connect those lines. I mean, you can also you can put this up. If you have a traced version or whatever, you can put this up to yourself to see kind of where this is crossing on the chest to see if you want it to be moved over a little more, then you want to bump up the line up higher, depending on how you want your angle to be. So just keep that in mind. This is you can kind of do it however you want. So you could do it a little bit shorter here. Might cross over that bust a little bit more. Let me just test it real quick. Okay, I'm actually going to make it a little bit higher. Just a smidge. I'm going to actually move this over slightly so it's a little bit further from that neckline, since it will shorten because of seam allowance when we add our neckband. And so I don't want it to be too close to the neck line. Yeah, so I'm squiggling out the little areas so I know not to use that line when I trace my next piece. Okay, so now we have our template. So go ahead and grab some tracing paper. I have a nice big roll. So now we're going to trace that and create our seam allowance for our front pieces. Okay, now that we have that, grab your ruler. Now you're going to add your seam allowance. Since this pattern is 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm just going to add that. But you can make it bigger or shorter as long as you just remember what it is. And now from that seam allowance that you added, you're going to draw a right angle. Draw a line perpendicular from that new line that we created, touching the points of our color block piece. So after that's done, scoot your tracing paper up a little bit so it's out of the way. And now we're going to trace the bottom half. Now the same thing with this. Grab your ruler and add your seam allowance. And this will ensure that when we sew it together, our seam allowance will match up nicely. So now your front is done. You can either cut it out now or put it aside. I'm going to put it aside and do the same thing to the back. And you can save your template piece in case you want to do any other color blocking later. You can use the same one. Just keep that in mind. Now with our back piece, we are going to be doing the opposite side, since it is going to be whatever shoulder you're picking, it's going to be the right side on one and the left side of the other. That way when they're right sides together, they match up. So go ahead and take your front piece you just did. If you have yours like mine, and it's on tracing paper, you can just put it on top of your front piece, or you're going to want to cut out your front pieces so you can lay it on top. So you can use that as your guide. Now I'm going to go ahead and line up. Doesn't matter which one, just line up your shoulder seams together on one of them so you can have a gauge of where to start your color blocking from. The same thing with the side seam. Go ahead and line that up. I'm going to line it up to the bottom one. Get your ruler and connect those lines. Now we're going to do the same thing as before and trace this again to add the seam allowance for both back pieces. Once that is done for both your front and your back, go ahead and cut those out, and then you're ready to cut out your fabric. To stay up to date on the latest videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel, or you can check out my blog at sewingandthings.com.